One of my favourite quotes about leadership from a Pixar movie. We are a bit show busy in this company. A lot of us have friends in Hollywood, Amanda too, and places like that. So I know some of the people at Pixar, and I love that quote. I think it's just wonderful. They're good writers. Mm-hmm. This is my great-grandmother. She was a Roma Gypsy woman. Our family is Roma Gypsy. I'm sure it's pretty obvious just looking at her. And her name was Helen Walker. That's a translation. A better translation would be person who walks. In other words, person who doesn't own a horse. In other words, person who's not very high in social class in the Gypsy community. And I don't know about you, but to me she looks like a tough old lady. Now, I don't for a moment have any reason to think that that I am any smarter than Helen was. I mean, for one thing, we have the same DNA. And yet, in her life, she did not have to absorb as much information as you are expected to absorb just about leadership development in a week. Never mind all the other things you're expected to absorb. It's overwhelming. It's too much. There is a cacophony of voices that assaults us today, and it is the problem of our time. Listen to me. No, listen to me. No, listen to me. No, don't listen to all those other people. Listen to me. Do it my way. Do my thing. That's the best thing. Their thing's got something wrong with it, and don't listen to him, whatever you do. Those are the messages we get all the time, and it's a lot, and it's overwhelming, and it's confusing, and it makes us feel stressful, and it makes us wonder if we're making the right choices. So when this talk was accepted for TOC, I then spent a few weeks on the phone, and Amanda helped me out. She's our operations manager, talking to secretaries of departments and assistant secretaries of departments, CEOs, vice presidents, deputy CEOs, people like that, clients of ours that we can be a bit relaxed and familiar with. And I said to them, what are you looking for in leadership development? What are you telling your HR directors that you need to have to make it worth the time and the money? What are you telling them not to do? What are you telling them you can't stand and don't want to see? And once they'd answered those questions, I asked them the big one. And the big one was, if you didn't care about possibly offending people, then what are the questions you would really like to ask of someone who comes to you and says, I can do leadership development for you? What are the rude questions, if you didn't mind maybe offending them a little bit? And they gave me their answers, and they were very forthright, and we looked at those, and they all coalesced down into 5 basic questions. So that's what we promised you today, and that's what I'm going to show you today. I hope. So we're going to start with a challenge now. I told you that we'd keep it brief, and my goal is actually to keep the whole talk brief so that we can hear your voices, because it's your voices I'd really like to hear, and hopefully we can have a bit of a discussion. So we have a problem for you to solve. I'm going to quickly describe it, and Amanda's going to help me. At that point, and be thinking about whether you'd like to be a part of this, we need 4 people to come up here and solve the problem. So decide now or begin to think whether you would like to be one of the 4. I promise you this is not a team building game. You will not be singled out, picked on, or trapped in the action in any way. We would never ever do that to you. So you're just going to have some fun, and people are going to watch, and of course it's a chance for you as experts to watch how they operate together, their group dynamics, how they coalesce to a solution, how they execute, and anything else that interests you in the big wide world of team dynamics. Now, before I take another step, I have to ask, how many of you right now would describe yourselves on one level or another as professional leaders? Let's see the hands. Most of you, 2/3 of you. To you I say, welcome, my friends, to the show that never ends. What you're going to see here is 4 black plastic mats. And the black plastic mats are labelled. And as I look at them standing here, from me heading that way, the numbers are 3, then 2, then 1, then 4. Your first goal is to step on those mats in order. So first of all, you need to be on mat 1 without being on any of the other mats. Then 2, then comes 2, then comes 3, then comes 4. So you can imagine 4 people. The first person is going to need to get to mat 1. We'll tell you in a minute what happens if they don't. The first person is going to, there's no facilitating saying, yeah, did the wrong thing. We've got real technology here. We've got stuff that will go off. This is the 15th hotel we've been told never to return to. So The first person is going to need to get to that first mat somehow, without stepping on any of the other mats, because the mats need to be stood on the order 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. There's one other rule for the mats, and the rule is you can never leave the vacant one behind. So that means that someone has to step on mat 1 and stay there, and then someone on mat 2 and stay there, and then 3, then stay there, and then 4, then stay there. What happens if you break the rules? If you break the rules, we don't want to be obnoxious. We do have neighbours here, so you will get feedback in the form of a flashing light there. If anybody suffers from epilepsy, you need to know that now. But the light's not flashing at a rate that's dangerous for that, we think. It's carefully arranged. But the flashing light will tell you that the wrong mats are being stood on, or that the mats are being stood on the wrong order, or that you've accidentally left a vacant one behind. So far, so clear? Now comes the question of why. Why are you doing this? Well, the reason you're doing well, I don't know. Why are they doing no? By the way, Amanda thoroughly understands this problem and helped to design it, so you can ask her any questions you like. It just happens to be me that's doing the talking. If you can get someone on mat 1, and then someone on mat 2, and then someone on mat 3, and then someone on mat 4, then when that someone stands on mat 4, and only if you've stood on the mats in the correct order and you have them all filled up, there's $20,000 worth of computers there monitoring the rules that are proprietary to us and patented, just so you know. And if somebody does make it to mat 4, as soon as they stand on mat 4, that little car that some of you might see, and if not, you'll have to believe me, but you'll be standing around and watching in a minute. There's a little car back there. That little car will start to move. When it does, it will go through an electric eye. And the electric eye will set off a device, and that device will tell you that you have been victorious. And the car, and if any of you have PTSD, I have a touch of it because I'm a former intelligence officer. I need to tell you now that there'll be a little poof when the device goes off. Not loud, but if you have PTSD, as I do, you need to know that. And eventually, if you're successful, that car will move forward. And the Holy Grail, which is inside the little cart, will then come within reach of the person on mat 4. And once it's within reach, they can reach down, and from the middle of the Holy Grail, they can retrieve
a key.
A key.
And the key is how you get to your prize.
And the key is how you get to the box. That's exactly right.
This is the whole point of the game, just to get into this little guy.
Checking something here. Pardon me, that was just a safety check. So once that happens, you will have the key. It's time to hoot and holler and be happy and congratulate yourselves and each other. And then what we hope is that the tree will open the treasure trunk, and who knows what's in there. So the question is, you'll need to do a little bit of planning and thinking first of all. The rest of you might like to gather round so you can hear them plan and think. You're welcome to chime in. There are no rules. I've told you the only rules that there are. Other than that, there are no rules. It's down to your own ingenuity. And I don't know how you're going to solve this problem. We never do with our simulations. People always solve the problems in ways we would never have foreseen. So the first thing is, are there 4 people who are willing to do this? We'll get those 4 people and they can report to Amanda and she'll take good care of them. And for the rest of you, just gather around anywhere you want and, watch the fun. Okay. Now, who would like to have a go at this? Let's see the hands.
Who are my brave 4 people? 1,
come on up here.
2,
2, we've got 2, 3. Do we need one more?
Come on up.
Come on down.
Oh, yeah, come on up. Yeah.
Yeah, come on. Anything over for us.
Well done.
Go to her.
All right. Yeah, right here is fine.
1, 2, 3,
welcome,
and 4.
Welcome.
Come and join us. I promise you that this is not a team building game and you will be treated respectfully and like adults.
Yeah.
And this is actually a difficult challenge.
There's no finger.
It's not some silly, balance on the thing, team building thing. This is actually quite cognitively tricky, as you'll soon discover as you start planning. So I'm going to leave these 4 with Amanda. They're going to complete the ignoring and start planning, and Amanda, you've got them under control.
I do.
For the rest of you, you're welcome to stay seated. But I personally think you'll have a much better view if you stand where I'm standing. And come on up and crowd around and let's have a total, let's have a rabble. And come and listen to them plan, and then come and watch them execute.
Somebody needs to be standing on that one, and then
behind
I'm
somebody else.
just trying to get out of the way here.
And then 3.
I'm just in the way.
Once you all unload it, then you just four minutes. The little car will deliver you the key. And then you can pick it up, unload the mats, and then.
And once we've started, we can't stop and go back.
Well, I mean, you could if you really felt you needed to.
Okay. All right.
I'm not going to tell you whether you can walk in or out of the game.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. So who's going to be our
I'm
one?
just going to get out of the way.
Okay.
That's my goal.
Do we need you, Dave? Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute.
And those beeps, ladies, keep talking. Those beeps, ladies and gentlemen, tell you that this gear is real. Okay, it's not fake.
Don't get your
We're
fingers
not
squished.
pretending. It's a simulation, but the gear is as real as it can be.
Yep.
Oh, you've got that.
There we go. Nice. Yep.
I love the way you're helping each other. It's really nice. Do that at work, please.
Okay. And 3 is easy. Oh, this is heavy.
Yeah.
You just step to 3.
Yeah. Oh, you want to go to 3? Well, let's think this through.
You
How are we
decide.
going to get you to 4 then?
Ladies and gentlemen, quote of the day. Let's think this through. Congratulations.
Mats don't care. Mats don't care how many people are on each one. It's just on one, so you could just.
We didn't know that. Well, that sounds
Well,
fine.
that's
Wait.
I wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
So
Say
like
that
a
again?
The
step
mats
from
don't
that.
care how many people are on it.
Oh,
So once you go
Yeah.
to
Do it up.
3, you can just somebody can just walk past.
so we could both go to 3 and then I could just go to 4. Yeah. Let's go.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now get ready. Something good's going to...
That is success, ladies and gentlemen.
Now. Brass padlock. Whoa. Oh, what have you got there?
Yes. There you go.
Oh, the challenge coins.
Are they for everyone?
Yeah, that's for everyone.
One each. Just the 4 each. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, give these people a huge round of applause. Hold up your prize. For those of you who work for the government, you need to know the value of the challenge coin is a lot less than $10.
It's de minimis.
So you're good. However, comma, you can't buy one anyway. You have to be here, be now, and be you. So give them another huge round of applause, would you please? Now, if you want your own challenge coin, we got you covered. But why don't you get seated and comfortable first of all? And yes, and Amanda's going to talk to you in a minute. But first of all, you're going to do a little bit of talking, and let's see how we're going with time. I loved the quote. And who had the quote? Where are the 4 of you again? I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't know your name.
Stephanie.
Stephanie's quote is the thing I'm going to remember. What matters, of course, is what you're going to remember. But what I'm going to remember is Stephanie's quote, right in the thick of the action, when there's buzzers buzzing and lights flashing and we're putting pressure on you and you've never seen anything like this before in your life, because that's the whole notion of simulation. If you've seen it before, it's not a simulation, by definition. And it's complicated and you don't want to mess it up because everybody's watching. Right in the middle of all of that pressure, Stephanie's voice pipes up clear and still. Wait a minute. Let's think about this. Congratulations, Stephanie.
Never happens to me.
I love it.
You can be on my team anytime. There are any number of screw-ups that we all know about that would have been fixed if someone had stayed calm. It's called outlier behaviour. It turns out to be critical. We did some research on this with the Navy and UCLA and the University of Arizona and Sandia National Laboratories. We all teamed up together and we were trying to figure out why the Navy was having these terrible surface collisions between ships. It was because there was no one on the bridge that said,
Wait a minute. Let's stop and think about this.
Ding.
there was no outlier behaviour. And we were actually able to watch that by collecting data from people's brains and by gathering the EEG system. So congratulations, Stephanie. You're now a consultant to the Navy. Please report for duty to the White House tomorrow.
1970.
It was bad enough when you had to return your dad's car on Sunday morning with a ding in it. Can you imagine returning a submarine with a huge ding in it? Like, sorry, you'll never believe what happened. You're going to laugh when you hear this story. So, I would like to get a couple of quick comments. I'd love to debrief this for the whole hour, but we do have some content for you. So what I want to know is, just from anybody, no discipline, no form of reference, nothing. Just let's hear it. Nice and loud and clear, out your voice, please. What do you feel like saying? No, you've got to give
Watch
me
them
time.
all huddled together and try and figure it out.
Thank you. What else do you feel like saying? Let's hear it. If you're debriefing a group like this, you have to give people time. Don't rush it. So what do you feel like saying after this experience? Just quickly.
Team building is engaging together.
Team building, engaged together. Thank you. What else?
I thought it was interesting that I could see something that they couldn't see because I wasn't in the thick of it.
I could see something that they couldn't see because they were in the thick of it. And there's a famous leadership model on that called the Adair model. And in the Adair model, you are the person in the helicopter. And you can look it up on Google tonight. But the helicopter is the boss, the supervisor, hovering above it all, looking for the patterns, looking at the group dynamics, which you can't really see at ground level. Thank you. What else do you feel like saying?
It seemed to be well done.
It did, didn't it? It seemed to be well done. In fact, as I was watching you do this, and we do have a recording of it, but only of your backs, because we don't want to violate privacy. But I almost had the sense that you could almost set it to music. There was a rhythm to it. Does that make sense? I think Baby Elephant March is about the right rhythm, or Ravel's Bolero, like dum, 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 about that rhythm. The brain, ladies and gentlemen, is a beatbox. It's a rhythm machine. That's what we know about the brain. You actually have several different beats within the brain. There's not just one. But the brain is a beatbox. It's a rhythm machine. That's why when you go to a house party and there's house music, after a minute or two, you start going, doof, doof, doof. You can't help yourself. You can't help yourself. It's a form of hypnosis. It's called pulse entrainment. Pulse entrainment. And what we were seeing today that you could almost put a music to is called team rhythm. And we do a lot of work with team rhythm. You've all seen it. When really good teams work together really well, you do have this sense that you can set it to music. And that's because the brains are syncing in rhythm. Why? Because the brain is a beatbox. What else do you feel like saying? Yes, ma'am.
They're courageous because they're asking questions.
They're courageous because they're asking questions. What a great thing to say. Yes, absolutely. There have been many cases, and I won't tell you what they are because they're a bit tragic, but there's certainly one famous case in team dynamics where an airplane crashed because the cabin crew did not dare ask questions of the flight crew. And they didn't ask a question, and the engine was on fire, and the flight crew didn't know. Always ask questions. Einstein said, "I have no particular talent, I am only passionately curious." What else do you feel like saying? I'd love to go all day. I mean, Amanda usually is the one that says, "John, stop." Because I don't want to listen to me, I want to listen to you. Let's do one more round. Yes, there's a hand up.
I think you all did a nice job helping to provide context. You know, it didn't feel like a setup.
Thank you. The starting point for these designs is not, are we going to use maths or computers and how do we program our computers? The start is always, what kind of team dynamics are we trying to simulate? That was the goal here. And I'll tell you what my goal is, and you tell me if you think we got anywhere with it. The goal was to create something behaviourally that could not be created with a lecture or a PowerPoint show.
And that is a great segue into what I'm about to talk about. Thank you, Joe.
It is indeed. And with that, she's got one of those big hooks with a thing in it. With that, may I hand over to my colleague, please, and the clicking button is that one there if you want
Just
it.
click it once for me, buddy. There we go. That's my whole talk right there.
It is.
So, the first thing I wanted to say is the reason I'm standing up here is because I want to ask the question. I'm going to tell you the answer, don't worry. I'm going to ask the question, why did we do all that just now? What was the point, right? And the point is that none of us is a floating brain in a jar, right? I'm pretty sure. I mean, I haven't looked all the way to the back, but biochemistry circumscribes our every living moment. And so, we have to address biochemistry if we want to address behavior. So, before you interview all of the people that would like to get your money to do your training for you, you want to decide what kind of training you want in two big broad categories. There's one type of training where you sit in a classroom just like you're doing today, and you listen to somebody who's standing up at the front just like you're doing today with note-taking and books. And that's really good. This type of training is really good at one thing: retaining information. If you want to retain facts, this is the kind of training you need. Something you learned in school that you still remember today, you probably learned in a classroom a lot like this, and that's why. But this type of training is really bad at what the other broad general category is really good at: changing behavior. If you want to change behavior, if you want to create the behaviors of leadership, you're going to need something like simulation. In the same way that a pilot who's learning how to behave when they fly into a storm, that's why they call it a flight simulator. It's because they're using simulation. Now, why would we do that? We're going to use simulation because to learn a new behavior, you know this, if you want to learn a new habit, you're going to create many, many iterations of that behavior until you get it, right? You're not going to get it the first time you do that first push-up, and you're like, oh yeah, thank goodness, I'm all well now. No, it's got to go over and over and over again. And to get a lot of bites at that apple, you have two ways of doing that. You can wait until the world gives you an option to practice that behavior, and maybe it gives it to you once a year. And so if you need 10 iterations, in 10 years you'll be good at that thing. Or you can design a simulation where you'll get 10 bites at that apple in the first day or two. You can speed the process up. That's why we use simulation to train people like pilots or astronauts. And we can use simulation to train people like all of us, because the reason it works is because we're human beings. And that's really all I have time for. Over to you, John.
Wonderful. Thank you. There is a fabulous short story written in the 1960s about a woman with a very rich, very obnoxious husband who wants to transcend the grave. And so when he dies, he has himself kept alive as just a brain in a jar. And the one thing he couldn't stand most of all during their marriage was her smoking. It drove him nuts. So now in the short story, she walks up to the jar and butts out her cigarette on the jar every day to torment the husband. It's a short story you should read. It's a little twisted, but it's funny. Okay, it's a lot twisted. Now, here's what you came for. I really dislike talks where you don't get what you came for, or where it's a thinly disguised pitch for something. So we're going to try not to fall into that trap. Here are some of the things that these senior people told us. And all I did was categorise them into 5 clusters, talked about it at some length with Amanda and a little bit with Cory, and here we're presenting the results. So what I want to emphasise before I do that is this is not really my opinion or theirs. Not really. It's their opinion. It's the opinion of people like you or people who are at the top of organisations like yours about what they really want and what they'd really like to say. As you see some of these questions, you may think, oh, I could never ask that. That question's a bit rude. That question's a bit pointed. What happens if I offend someone? Well, at the end of the session, we ask them that question also. And we're going to tell you what you can do if you offend someone and how you can deal with it. But we'll save that to the end. First of all, let's start with the rude questions. What have you led? In being polite to people, we have a terrible tendency sometimes to neglect our own needs. We're polite to others and not to ourselves. We don't ask the questions whose answers we really need. We don't ask the questions we really want to ask. So as you look at that and you think, oh, that's a bit pointed, think about yourself. Think about your own rights. Think about your own responsibilities as decision makers and senior people in powerful positions and decision-making positions. Because nobody's going to want to hear your excuses if it fails. That's on you. So it seems to me, and this is something I've often spoken about, and it's not true in every workplace, but I'd urge you to make it true for yourself. If you are going to be held responsible for your outputs, If you are going to be held responsible for your outputs, then you should have the right to control all your inputs. And every input that's restricted should give you the right to fail in a matching output. So always argue for control over your inputs if you're leading people. It may be difficult, you may have to tell truth to power, and we can't have every toy in the toy shop. We're adults, we know that. But always try and control your inputs as much as you possibly can. So in that spirit, ask yourself, if you are responsible for leadership development or for professional development in your organisation, and you are responsible for leading that, and you're trying to get other people to lead other things, do you really want someone who's never led anything in their life? Do you really want someone who's nothing wrong with consulting? And I do have some fairly advanced academic training myself. So there's nothing wrong with that either. But do you want that person? Let me put this another way. Let's suppose you're unlucky enough to need a quadruple heart bypass. I hope that never happens to you. But who do you want? Do you want the surgeon who has 3 PhDs in subjects like aspects of transactional gestalt and heart bypass, inverse overhead transitional situations in major hospitals? Do you want that person working on your heart, or do you want the surgeon who's done 400 surgeries just like it? I'll take the person who's done 400 surgeries. She's seen a thing or two. There's a bit of experience there, I might live. I think you have every right, if anyone uses the word leadership, to ask them, well, what have you led? How many people have you led? What were the stakes? What were the consequences of failure? Where did you do it? How did it go? And again, you might offend some people, but on the other hand, what these senior folks said to us when we phoned them up was this. If that doesn't mean they can't succeed as leaders, it doesn't mean they're bad people or that they wouldn't succeed, but if they haven't had that track record, then I think you're taking a bit of the risk, assuming that they can help you get that track record. With this physique, I can assure you that I have never danced a primary part in Swan Lake for the Kirov Ballet. And I think if I stood in front of you and said, all right, I'm going to teach you how to dance Swan Lake now, you would think, but he's never done it. He's never done it. He's never been there. And in some environments, one of the damning statements you'll hear, particularly in law enforcement military environments, about some trainers is, and it could just easily be a she or a he, I'm going to make it a he, he's never seen an angry man. Right? How can you teach me to deal with somebody who's angry and upset at a policing incident because they don't think they should be arrested and their girlfriend's furious? And the crowd's furious because of what they did. And they want to beat the person up. You can't allow that either. Have you ever been in that situation? Has anyone ever been yelling in your face and telling you how they'd like to beat you up? Could you keep calm? Could you lead those people through the woods? And if you haven't, then what are you doing talking to a room full of hardened police officers? Does that make sense? What have you led? May I have my phone, please? Thank you. Thank you so much. Good. Next one. This is a quote from Steve Jobs. Has anyone ever heard the quote? Somebody asked Steve Jobs, pardon me? Jobs.
It's the accent.
Potato. It's the accent. Somebody asked him, what's your game plan? What do you want your life to mean once it's over? What do you want to achieve? And Steve Jobs said, I want to leave a ding in the universe. So he did do it. So you have every right to ask that person, what shaped ding have you left in the universe? Because if they're training you and you're hiring them to develop people to go out and do things, not just talk about things, more about that in a minute, and have an effect and get results and create something that you really could put on your headstone. I did this, right? If you want that, if you need that, then surely you should be looking for someone who has done that. So it's fair to ask them, what is your proudest achievement? What's the biggest ding you've ever left in the universe? And if the only thing I ever did was talk to groups of 20 or 30 people, then that might not be enough for you. Now, it might be enough for you, but it might not be. My point is not that as the fact that you have the right to ask the question, and then you have the right to judge the answer. And you should insist on that right and not be so quick to give your power away. We give our power away far too easily in this world. Ask them what kind of shaped ding they've left in the universe. Because if they haven't left a ding in the universe, can you be sure that they can help you leave a ding in the universe? It's the old Kirov Ballet, silly example again, right? I've never done Swan Lake, so if I've ever done that, how can you be sure that I can help you down at Swan Lake, no matter how many books I've read? And yes, you need to read the books as well. You have to do both. Now, the next question is that you are engaging that person to be successful in your world, not some other world. So if they have a distinguished career of leadership in horse racing, and you're running the accounts payable department of the Wisconsin office of the IRS, it doesn't necessarily translate. You have a right to ask them, how can you be successful in my world? I get that you know all about horse racing and you were the world champion horse race trainer of 1996 and we've got the horse racing award and you know, you have a horse on your tie and all the rest of it. But what can you do for the accounts payable department of the Wisconsin office of the IRS? This is where you find out if they've bothered to do any research. And if they don't even know what the accounts payable department in the Wisconsin office does, if they don't realise some of the absolute basics, like you're a sub-department and you can make certain decisions but not others, and that's your world, well then, are they really ready to help you succeed in your world? It is your world you need them to succeed in, not any other world. So be a bit selfish. This is one time to be a bit narrow and to think about your world and ask them what they have done in your world. Have you ever worked with tax people before? Have you ever worked with federal people before? Do you know anything about budgets? If I said sequestration, would you understand what the implications of that are for a GS14 middle manager? And if they don't, then they may be limited in their ability to have an effect in your world. Does that make some sense? Think about your world. And if you see them rolling their eyes and thinking, oh God, do I really have to become a specialist in your silly little thing? Well, I'll give you a quote from Star Wars. Cory's going to tell me where this comes from. But here's the quote. These are not the droids you're looking for. Who said that? Obi-Wan Kenobi, thank you. Am I pronouncing that right? Never mind. Obi-Wan Kenobi, that famous leadership and management consultant. They may not they may not be.
I would not use him as a, he was a very bad trainer.
You don't mind if this whole thing just degenerates into a nerd science discussion, do you? That would be typical for team results. Ask them to show you a track record that you can admire. Not that others can admire, but that you personally can admire in your own world and benefit from in the world you live in, not the world anybody else lives in, because that is what you will be judged on. And sooner or later, someone's going to tell you if you were successful or not successful. So if you don't control your inputs, you're very much blown on the uncaring winds of fate toward a destination unknown across choppy and unfriendly seas. And who wants that? This might be the rudest question, I don't know. You tell me. Talking is great. I've made a profession of it. So has Amanda. How old were you when you were on the stage first?
First on the stage at 5 years old.
5 years old. And both of her parents are professionals, performers. Your dad's a Shakespearean actor, am I right?
Yep, mom's a professional singer.
So,
Theatre family.
A theatre family. And of course, I've had to become a little bit show busy myself, and that's who Team Results is. You can see that. You can see that we bring the fun. So am I talking against talking? No. Talking is wonderful. Talking is how we reach people. And there have been famous speeches in this country that have echoed throughout history that were just words, and yet they've moved the whole nation and they've changed attitudes. So talking can be great. But ask yourself for this question, if talking is all you do. Now, if you're running a section of criminal defence lawyers, then maybe that is it. That might be your product. It might be talking. But if you're running a section of people whose job it is to revolutionise the speed with which funds reach regional offices, particularly when those funds arrive late owing to struggles on the Hill, creating problems for budget execution given the logistics you have to exercise in the field and the amount of people and stuff and money you have to move around, that, all of it together, is a hell of a lot more than talking. So you're entitled to ask these people, I know you've done talking, I'm sure you're great at it, but what else have you done? Because you're being asked to do that. Most of you, just talking, with certain exceptions, is not enough to do your job. It's not enough for me. I can do this talk, but I've got to be able to work with Cory and work with Amanda and work with our other staff, and we have equipment that doesn't work and things that aren't ready and places to get to and things to do and clients to liaise with, and then they call us and they say, oh, we've had a crisis, we want to totally change the design for the program, we've changed our objectives. They do that 3 days before the program. There's a lot more to it than just talking, and I'm sure your lives are the same. So you have the right. That's the big theme today. You have the right. You have the right to say to these people, what have you done besides talking? And if they get offended or a bit insulted, don't worry, we're going to tell you what to do at the end, but not yet. Talking is great, but for very few of us is it enough to get us promoted. It's not enough to get our company, our clients, it's not enough to get you your next job. You've got to do stuff. So you need to know how these people have gone in their own lives doing things, not just talking. And now, I couldn't resist this. If somebody, when I get to the pearly gates and St. Peter asks me, what did you ever do? I'm going to say we built a school in Haiti. That's going to be my excuse to try and slip through the pearly gates, despite all of the terrible, scummy things I did while working in the intelligence community. And I did do terrible, scummy things because we were professional cloak and dagger people. That was my field, covert and clandestine operations. So I'm hoping to get into heaven on this and not on all the other stuff. This is one of my favourite doings. This is in a town called Bossier in Haiti, which is a mile away from a town called Léogâne. Léogâne was the epicentre of the earthquake. It wasn't Port-au-Prince. Everyone thinks that. They just got aftershocks. Léogâne was flattened. And so was the school, and kids were killed and teachers were killed. So we came back there on a rescue mission a few months afterwards to train first responders because I was a volunteer firefighter. And I had me and this dude here, hang on, this guy here, that's Cyril Damour. Cyril and me were sitting on the beach one night and we just had this crazy idea, the two of us, maybe we can rebuild the school. So this is the Soleil School, the Sunshine School. We have 300 kids and they look so neat and clean because they all have brand new uniforms there. That's the first day of school. So that's what I mean by doing. And I'm really, happy with that. By the way, I had to promise not to advertise anything, but I'm going to break that rule here. You can sponsor a kid if you like. Tell us if you want to sponsor a boy or a girl, or if you don't care, and you can send a kid to school, to this school in Port-au-Prince. And Cyril and I, of course, have become very, very close, putting this all together over a period of years. And we're dressed rough here because we were doing hard outdoor work, but he does look very good in his suit, and he's actually he's actually the headmaster. He's the principal there. Question number 5. What are your original ideas? Now, like most people who are in this line of work, and I'm sure like most of you, I could give you a pretty good talk, probably with no notice, on the Tuckman model. Forming, storming, norming, performing. I could give you a pretty good talk on the John Adair model, the team, the task, the individual, the overlap, the helicopter. I could probably give you a pretty good talk on the famous story of Shackleton and the Antarctic and how all 27 people survived thanks to his leadership. We all know these stories. We can all deliver this content. And that content all has value. None of it is without value, and we sometimes deliver that content ourselves. But you are in a job where you will be judged for your original ideas. Now, how many of you are familiar with the concept of ECQs? Can you raise your hand up if you've heard of ECQ? Okay. The ECQ I'm thinking of particularly here is transformational leadership. And I'll tell you, out of all the ECQs, we've worked with a lot of very senior people over the years. I've asked them all what gets people promoted. How do you decide who to promote and why? It's always that one. If you want to get into the senior executive service, transformational leadership is an idea at the age of 33, which I now think was far too young. I wasn't ready. But transformational leadership is how you go. Transformational leadership is all about ideas. It's about having your own ideas. It's that old question that teachers used to ask you, or college tutors. Yes, I know what Maslow said. I know what Eysenck said. But what are your own ideas? What are your thoughts on that? Go away and write about that. You are entitled to find people who have had their own original ideas that have got somewhere. So you could ask them, do you have any original ideas, any original models, any original things that have gotten somewhere and had an impact on the world? You have? Great. Tell us all about it. Where can I find out more? If you are being expected to come up with original ideas, if for you, being a transformational leader is what's going to get you promoted and successful, and above all else, what's going to get you happy, then you are entitled to have people working with you who also have had their own original ideas and can help you. Does that make sense? This whole talk is really about me urging you to stand up and claim what's rightfully yours. And if they don't have their own ideas, can you be sure they can help you have ideas if they don't know what's involved? How many of you, since we're a couple of minutes ahead of schedule even with questions, I'll ask you this one. How many of you are familiar with the name Richard Feynman? Hands up. F-E-Y-N-M-A-N? Okay. Probably the greatest physicist the United States ever produced. Einstein doesn't count because he was born in Germany. So Richard Feynman, though, was an all-American guy. And Feynman used to say, this is a quote from a genius, Feynman used to say, people who have never had original ideas don't understand how hard it is, how difficult it is to have a truly original idea, the checks you have to do, the work you have to put in, the rigour you have to apply, the effort you have to apply to convince others. If you haven't done it, if you haven't lived it, you really can't know what that's all about. Now, he was talking about ideas in physics, but he was also, like Einstein, a philosopher in a much wider sense, and it's very clear to me that he meant it in a much wider sense. You need someone who understands how hard it is to be original, how hard it is to come up with something truly new that no one has thought of before, how difficult it is to make sure that what you've done is sound and reliable and not just rubbish, and that it works, and that people take it up, and that it's truly original. And if you can find someone like that, then that might be a person that can help you, and can help you, more importantly even than that, can help you help others come up with original ideas. Like, how the hell are we going to execute budget when we got our money 3 months late? And that's a real problem that one of our clients has right now. How in the hell is that even possible? How are you going to do that? Because nobody wants to give that money back, because you all know what's going to happen. You're all government employees. You know what happens when you give money back. That's not good. So they're in the market for original ideas now. They're looking for original ideas within very tight constraints, because you have to be careful with money in the government. So if your possible person hasn't created original ideas, then can they really help you do it? Can you be sure? And so now, before we come to questions, here's a quick summary. And by the way, this is in your little app for this session, so you don't have to remember it or write it down if you don't want to. Here are the 5 questions you could ask these people, specifically. Amanda, what have you led? Amanda, what would you say the biggest thing you've ever done is? What shaped ding have you left in the universe? So Amanda, we do tax preparation in this office, and we verify, we look at the exceptions, the things that have been done wrong, we verify those, and we apply corrective measures. How have you succeeded in that world? What have you done in that world? What do you know about that world? Number 4, Amanda, you're very eloquent and you talk beautifully, not surprising since you come from a theatrical family, but what else have you done? What have you done that you could point to with pride that is more than just talking? And finally, what are your original ideas? Do you have any ideas in this field that are all your own, things that you've introduced and created and pioneered? Why don't you talk about those for a couple of minutes? Those are the 5 questions. That is what we promised you today. Be thinking about your questions. We have time for a couple before we finish. We will finish on time, but before we do that, I made you one last promise that hasn't been kept yet. That was the answer, across the board, from every one of these senior people, no exceptions. If you're not prepared to offend people, you shouldn't be a leader. Being responsible sometimes means pissing people off. And I'll tell you one other thing too, and this is a point Amanda made, so I'm stealing it. If they get offended, they're probably not the droids you're looking for. Because no one who's properly provenanced in these areas is going to be offended by any of these questions. I can certainly speak personally. You can ask me any of these questions anytime you like, and you won't get offence. You'll just get a simple, honest answer. Have you ever led a lot of people? Yes. What's the largest number of people you personally have ever led in your life? About 900. Have you ever led an organisation of 10,000 people? No, nowhere near that many. What level were you at when you led those people, SES 1? These are not offensive questions to people that have good answers. Am I making a clear point here? When people give you the old, I'm not sure I understand how that's relevant. It's probably because they don't have a good answer. And it doesn't mean you didn't have the right to ask the question, and it doesn't mean you were wrong to ask the question. Be courageous, ask the questions. If you have to break eggs, break eggs. You're a leader, you're responsible. You have the right. The responsibility too, but also the right. In your notes, you'll see a reading list. I'm not going to cover that now, but these readings come from 3 sources. The NASA astronaut program, which we had a little bit to do with, the State Department program for training new diplomats, which we had a great deal to do with, and other sources, people like you that said, hey John, you forgot one, why don't you put this in? And if you think there are any like that, let me know. But that is a pretty good reading list, and if you are interested in reading and studying, and some of these are very academic and others are very practical, you might enjoy that reading list, and again, it is in your notes in the app, or if you need a copy, just let me know. Most of you in your places of employment have access to things like the Harvard School of Business online library. Most of you feds have Harvard accounts. So, for example, you can find the Harvard papers here without having to pay all over again. You probably already have that access. Talk to your librarian. We are not consultants. There's nothing wrong with consultants. We love consultants. But we will never charge for talking, ever. So you are incredibly welcome to follow up with us and say, can you find me more about this? Can I talk to one of these senior leaders you were referring to? Can you research this? Can we have a coffee with you? You will never, ever have us trying to pursue you for money for that. It is our pleasure. I love doing it. So does Amanda. Please don't hesitate. The only thing we'd ever charge you for is a team and leadership program, and we're not here to talk about that. So with that, I'm going to turn that off so we can see each other's faces. And we have about 2 minutes left. And what I was wondering was if there are any questions, comments, feedback, good jokes, bad jokes, or feedback of any kind before we wrap it up today. Over to you. Yes, ma'am.
I love the question that you asked, right? But the counselor in me wants someone to get to the right answer. When you ask that question and someone kind of fumbles, do I take the fumble as an indication, or do I say, well, I probe with them more so they can get to an answer that I think is somewhat acceptable?
What a great question. If you don't mind, I'm going to repeat it. If I ask one of these questions and someone kind of fumbles the answer, do I take that as a sign that they don't have an answer or to judge them adversely? No, because they're not Shecky Green, right? They're not quiz show hosts. Unless you are auditioning them to do the job I'm doing right now, there's no reason for instant answers and articulateness to be their number one skill. Let them fumble, give them time, let them think, give them some space, be generous, and really make sure that you've explored it thoroughly. You're judging their content, not their performance. You're judging content, you're judging substance, not cosmetics. Any other questions? I would love to go all day. We can't, but yet we can. If you want to follow up with us, we have a stand out there in the exhibitors area. It's a big sign that says step into reality. You can't miss it. Visit us, where you can do 2 things. You can continue the conversation and you can get a challenge coin of your very own. Because an hour from now, we're going to have a version of this challenge, but different, set up in our booth, and you can come and play with it yourself. And if you succeed, you will win a challenge coin. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking to all of you today. Amanda, do you want to say thank you?
I just want to say thank you, and we'll see you later at the booth.
I want to thank Cory, who works his tail off.
Seriously.
This man is the man behind the magic. There would be no company without us.